Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. With me in the studio, as always, is Eric Moore, and we have a special guest in the studio today, Dr. Stephanie Sweeney.
Thanks for having me.
We are excited to have you. I know Eric and I have had this on the books for quite a while now, and we just had our big retreat, and we were looking forward to having you in. So welcome. We got a lot to unravel today. We're going to put you on the spot with a few questions here, but nothing too crazy. But first, I want to talk to Eric. I want you to give me a little bit of feedback. And you, Dr. Sweeney, you're actually in the room for the leadership retreat. Overall experience, what do you guys have to say?
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. In fact, my team is just going to go ahead and permanently reserve the table front and center.
I told her she gets, if anyone's, sorry guys, I already reserved, she already gets the middle table next year. I already told her right up front.
Yeah. We had a great experience.
Spot on right up front. I know.
Hey, first come, first serve. She called it.
Yeah.
I think every leadership retreat, you guys have been literally right up front. So that spot is permanently for your practice. So
Yes.
Everyone that's listening right now, hopefully they don't send an email saying, how do I get those special privileges?
Well, and we have been at every leadership
That's right.
retreat.
Seniority. Yeah. There you go. Seniority
That's
has
right.
its privileges.
Yeah.
VIP access, VIP. So I like it. But I think we were trying to figure out, what is the best thing that we can talk about? But, you're so personable, Dr. Sweeney. I would like you to tell us a little bit about your practice, kind of just a little bit of background of, before you were working with Tower Leadership, what did Savannah Dental look like? We were down there, it feels like yesterday when we were walking into your office for the first time. So just tell us a little bit about your experience, what your background looks like, and then we'll kind of guide the conversation from there.
Now, I did tell Stephanie, I said, this is going to be easy. So we won't ask any crazy questions. I do want to tell everybody that, we talked about this before, Stephanie, is that I highly respect you. And one of the things that Stephanie said to me before we started, by the way, she was like, Matthew, you don't just let anyone just be a guest on your show. And I'm like, I don't, right? It's really got to be somebody that is really of a different caliber. And you are. I mean, it's just truth. You are of a different caliber.
Thank you.
What you've been able to do, I mean, this podcast, the people that mostly listen to this podcast are driven. People that want to create, do also amazing things in multi-location. They're, we're blessed to have such, driven people listening to the podcast. And then there's nobody else I'd rather have that in that conversation than you because of what you've been able to accomplish, what you've been able to do. But I think you also have that it factor around the way you see building a team and culture, taking care of people, actually asking them how they're doing, right? I mean, you've been able to do it from a financial standpoint, but you've also been able to build a team around you. And so I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself, and then I'm just going to ask a gazillion questions because I want people to hear a little bit. Just a little bit about your practice, where are you at? Just, you don't have to tell any crazy numbers, just kind of a little bit about where you're at.
Okay. Well, when I first met you guys, I had only owned a practice for maybe about 6 months. I'd purchased it from an existing doctor, and there was 5 of us total, so 2 hygienists, 2 front desk, and an assistant. And I really had no idea what I was doing, but it was going okay.
I remember that.
And that was honest God truth. And I was just like, I hope it keeps going. Like, I don't really know how to grow. I don't really know why I'm growing. But then I luckily came to a foundations thing and got to meet you guys. And now here we are, like about 4 years later. And I've bought another practice, or I bought a part of another practice. So it's kind of a cool situation. We actually had met at Tower Leadership, but turned out our practices were like a few blocks away. And I bought 50% of his practice. We merged the 2 together, so I'm 75, he's 25. And then we brought on some associates, and then we bought another practice that's about 40 minutes away from our main location. We also built out a call center, and so we've got an administrative building that's off-site with our insurance and our call center people. And it's been a phenomenal road so far, and we're looking for our next one now.
So we just told Stephanie, I think we spent 5 hours together or something.
It flew by. It did.
And so
30 minutes.
We spent some time together. We do this once a year. It's fun to see what happens in a 12-month period and the movements. One thing just to let you guys know, I was telling Stephanie, I said, we don't script the show. There's no scripting here. So I told her, I said, look, we don't have any questions prepared. And the reason why is I think that, when I tell you guys that, I truly want it to be authentic, because you can even take little parts of things you've done, like the call center. Let's just take that little piece. This is something people struggle with, because when you hit a certain place, you have all these phone calls coming in, and your practice is more of a higher end type practice, and you've got all these calls going in, and it's going chaos. I mean, just chaos. And then one of the things I suggest is like, let's take the phones out of the front. Let's put them somewhere else. Let's get some administrative space. And then they can focus on the phones, and we can actually quiet the front. So, what is your experience with that? Like, what ultimately led you to? I mean, we talked about it. I said, hey, this is something you should do. What has been your experience doing that? Is it a good thing? Has it been good for you?
Oh, it's been wonderful for us. Definitely helps to reduce some of the chaos. And I mean, honestly, at this point in time, the way we've grown, now our call center is handling calls for both offices. It has caused us to choose to switch to a web-based medical health record system, just because that makes it easier for the call center versus them remoting into servers at the two offices. But it's great because we can do all of our advertising, just one phone number, rings at one location, and then they can take care of our patients at either location, and frees up our people who are at the front to actually care for the people in our office. What is the worst thing that happens when somebody is on the phone and they have to put like a finger up and be like, 1 minute, please? Like, it just seems so rude. Like, we don't have to do that. It's great.
And look, I think that makes a big difference, because we've all been that patient who walks in and it doesn't feel like there's people always say, well, the lady is up front, she's nice. Yes, she might be nice, but if she's overwhelmed and there's all kinds of phones happening and she's verifying insurance and she's doing all these things, and it happens even with practices that are 6, 7, 8 million, it's like, well, let's just keep the phones up front and let pure chaos reign. But I know you've done that. One of the things we talked about before this podcast too is that, because I think it's been so impressive what you've been able to do with Invisalign, and you've been able to grow that type of business, and you've been able to grow a fee-for-service business, and you've been able to invest in marketing. And I said to you, you've invested in marketing. In the very beginning, I was like, hey, look, we've got to do this. We invest in marketing. And I think that most doctors struggle with that area, is really investing and growing through marketing, and really would be willing to make the investment. But I don't feel like you have. I feel like you understand it and you do it. So when it comes to making those decisions, or your first push towards marketing, what made you confident to be able to do it? Or was it just the way you're built or wired, or tell me about your just thoughts about that.
Well, I definitely am built to listen to people who are wiser than me. So when other people said, hey, you should be doing marketing, I'm okay, let's do marketing. And I know it seems kind of scary sometimes, the numbers, but you got to take a risk if you want to reward ever. And like you always say, you get what you measure. So you can truly see, if you look at what your marketing spend is, and then look at for instance, if you're marketing for new patients, you can look at your new patients, or you can look at your increase in revenues, and you can, based on your cycle that it's going to take for that patient to see your ad and get into your office and all this sort of thing, you can directly see the correlation. So once you see that, I think it takes any of the fear that you might have away, because it becomes really predictable. And, we see our new patient numbers go down, or our revenues go down one month, and that's the month that I'm going to push extra spend on marketing, because I need my revenue and my numbers to go back up. And
that's when people hold back, though. That's the difference. Is that
when you say push the spin, so our guests they know exactly, because what we run into a lot of times is they'll do one form of marketing, they'll just do SEO. Can you touch on like what all aspects of marketing you guys are doing right now? Because I know you're everywhere. Yeah. So can you let the people, like the listeners, know you're not just doing one campaign? What are some of the different ones you're doing?
It's just Google clicks.
No, we have a TV commercial, we have a radio commercial, we're in just about every local magazine. I think we have I think we're on like the scorecard at some of the local golf courses. Yeah, we have SEO marketing, Google AdWords. We have, lead gen. What is it? The MLive. We have them. So the funnels.
Everywhere.
Yeah. So
everywhere.
Yeah. Diversification. Yeah.
It's I watch you talk about that. He's like smiling because it's like there's something about being omnipresent, right? It's like we're everywhere. It's kind of awesome, right?
It's fun. It's fun. Except for then sometimes when you meet somebody, they're like, I know you. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. What was your name? And they're like, oh, you don't know me. And I'm like, oh. Okay. Not at all a little creepy.
And this is in an area, so the listeners know, and we've been to your practice. This is in like the heart of Savannah. So when you drive around, there's dental practice everywhere, and yours stands out above the rest. And it's not, I just want to give you credit because from a marketing standpoint, it's amazing to see what your practice is doing, because when people call in, they'll say, I'm in a very popular area, so marketing just, doesn't work. And you're living proof that it works every single time if you do it enough.
Oh, it was really funny when I got my first loan on the first practice, and it was through Bank of America. And, I'm talking to somebody that's at a call center, like across America, right? They know nothing about Savannah, and they're just asking these standard questions. And they're like, is your office a freestanding building, or is it in a strip center or whatever? And I'm like, oh, it's in like a medical center. And they're like, okay, are there any other dentists in your medical center? And I said, yes. And they said, but general dentists. And I said, yes. And they said, well, how many general dentists? And I said, 3 other general dentists. And they said, in your same, building? And I'm like, well, yeah, there's a lot of dentists. And they're like, okay, well, outside of this shopping center, how close is it to the next closest dentist? And I'm like, across the street. And they're like, they literally said, are you sure this is a good investment? And I said, yes, you don't know Savannah. This is just how it is.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Yeah, for the people in the back. Everywhere.
But you can stand out, and you got to be willing to do what others won't do. And clearly you've been able to do that. Speaking of what others won't do, something you've done that I think is amazing, and I haven't seen the vast majority of dentists do. You've surveyed your team. One thing I know is that for 100% sure you care about these people. Like you care about
100%.
them. You care about their well-being. You want that. It's not just lip service. It's just something it's in your heart. You believe it. You can't really fake this stuff. You either care or you don't. You care about people, and you ask them questions and survey them. And then you even ask them about how they feel about the other doctors and the practice. So tell me a little bit about that, the survey process, why you did that, and then what about asking about the other doctors? What does that look like? Why did you feel like you needed to do that?
Well, I feel like, doctors, we're not perfect. We need to hear about our shortcomings. And one of the questions is, would you refer your friends and family to? And it's Dr. A, Dr. B, Dr. C, I want to know about each of them. If you wouldn't refer your friends or your family, or you personally wouldn't want to go to one of the doctors on our team, that's not good. You're the one who's supposed to be able to build. How can you tell a patient that they need to get this treatment done with somebody if they don't feel comfortable getting treatment done with that provider? So it asks that, but then it also asks the question, do you feel that Dr. A, Dr. B, Dr. C, Dr. D, that they care about you as a person? Because I also don't want doctors on our team that don't treat everybody with the same respect that I would treat them. During the leadership retreat, I don't remember who said the comment, but it was something like, every person matters, doesn't matter your position. And, that's very much how I feel. I don't care what your level of education is. You matter as a person. You definitely matter as a person, and you should be treated that way. And it's unfortunate that not everybody treats people that way, but this is my way of finding that out. And you know what? I also found out when sometimes we get that feedback and somebody finds out that people don't feel like they care about them, it's maybe not true. They might actually care about them, but they don't realize how their words are affecting people, and it might help them to grow as a person and change their actions. So, you say you get what you measure. If you don't have feedback, you don't have any way to measure it, how will you ever change?
You get what you measure. That takes courage, though. I think it takes courage to it's hard to hear things about us that, especially as the doctor, right? It's like, I'm supposed to be above this. So when someone who just started the practice, who's working up front, has only been there for 4 weeks, and all of a sudden this person's saying, look, this person doesn't make me feel this way, or whomever it is, there starts to be this, I love it because it's like, look, we all can learn, we can all grow, we can all get better. I think, it's like, I love that you said we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. We're all trying to grow, but I love the intentionality of what message does that send to the team that they matter. Even asking the survey, tell someone they matter, and says, look, I actually care about what you think, and I care, it makes a difference. Now, when you get this feedback, do you give the doctors the feedback?
So we give the doctors a snapshot of the feedback.
Okay.
So it might be 80% of the team feels like you really care about them, but we got a few comments from a few people. Comments like X, Y, and Z have made them feel like they're not really important. So, we need to be more intentional with our words. Or, we got some feedback saying that you don't always stay for end of day, which made it seem to the team that, to some of our team members, that you didn't really care about what their wins were at the end of the day, and that didn't matter to you. And, so we need to be sure that we show up because they notice and they care, and it affects them. So, yeah.
I absolutely love that. And it goes back down to, you and I were talking about the leadership retreat. We were talking about going into those concepts, because it does matter. People, when I came into this industry, one of the things I found is people were just saying they're just human capital, and you just use them and get another one, and who cares? And I was like, what? Like, that's the most absurd thing in the world. Who treats people that way? And I didn't understand it. And so I think that's what you and I are the same ilk, right? We believe in the same thing, which is, if you want to build it. And here's the thing: I think that building a successful business that is profitable and grows is not mutually exclusive of treating people well. It's like I would argue that profitability goes up because retention goes up. It's a better place to work. It's less stressful. If you're going to actually build a business built to last, then you would take care of the people that are there. You agree?
100%.
Yeah.
So, human capital and staff are like dirty words at our office.
Yeah.
If you are caught saying either of those, you will be corrected. That is not what we say at our office. That is not how we call people.
I don't think your team would appreciate that either.
For those of you who don't know, one of the reasons why I coach not to say staff and employees, I don't even use the word employees, definitely not human capital, I don't know. That's... is because there's a disassociation. It's easier to go, that's an employee. It's not Rebecca, it's an employee. And there's a disassociation. My staff. Well, if it wasn't for the team of people, you wouldn't be there. You wouldn't be able to do any of the things you're doing. But it's easier to just call someone a staff member. That way, if we replace them, it's okay, right? It's like, but that's not how it works. These are actually people with dreams and visions and goals and desires and all these other things. And it's like, maybe if we tap into that, then they would be more, right? We would keep these people. So you care about people. You've grown significantly. You continue to look at opportunities and you want to market. You look at these different ways to increase average revenue, because I think you've done an amazing job for it. I feel like the sky is the limit. When you start thinking about, what do you think, why are you more successful? Because I was having a conversation with you before we got on air, and I said, what you've done is rare in the industry. It really is. I know it's like bragging on yourself, but what do you think that makes you different maybe than, or the way you're wired than maybe somebody who's struggling? Because there are people listening to this podcast who will listen to this and go, I'm just not that person, or I don't know how she's doing it, or what does that mean? So I'd love, what makes you different, or how are you wired differently? What do you think the keys to your success are? What do you think those things are?
I mean, even to touch on that is, you gave us at the very beginning of this, you said, I'm working on the third location now. I have all of these things going on, and yet you're still here on a Wednesday doing a podcast. You were able to, I want to point that out to the audience. You were able to step away from the dental chair, come to Atlanta, Georgia to do a podcast and meet with Eric for the day. So you were able to do that. So that's a touch on to your success. So I'll let you answer Eric's question, but I just wanted to point that out to people that it can be done.
Get the hell out of the chair.
Well, I actually think some of my success is I would almost say I'm kind of naive, and nobody told me it was hard. So I didn't tell myself that it's hard. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, you put self-imposed limitations, you tell yourself, I can't. It's just like getting into dental school. Somebody forgot to tell me that's hard. I thought getting into med school was hard. I thought dental school was easy. So I only applied to one dental school. I didn't know I was supposed to pick backups. I remember being at my dental school interview and somebody else being like, where else did you apply? And I'm like, oh, nowhere, because, tuition's best here. So I'm going to go here. And they were like, most people don't get in the first time. And wait, no, they don't get in the first time? Really? But it worked out. And you know what? I feel like sometimes that, like, just not knowing it's hard and just not telling yourself you can't and just being like, oh, I can do this. You say we should do this, and the next step is to go here, and we're going to get another office, and then also putting it out there. Like, I feel like last year we said we're going to have another office and we're going to put it in Richmond Hill. And I said that like in December. I had no idea of an office that was being for sale in Richmond Hill. I didn't know how we were going to do it, but we were going to do it. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, summer's getting here and I haven't done it yet. I guess I better go find that office, because I told a bunch of people I'm doing that. I don't want to make a fool of myself. So you found it. I found the opportunity. So I think
one thing I want to point out too is I think that you have a unique thing too, because humility is huge. But one thing that I will say absolutely is, and you've said this, because I've had people call me up and they're like, I'm trying to tell Stephanie to do something, but she'll come back to me and say, not unless Eric says so. So it's so funny. So because one thing I would say is, like, you have been like, look, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Right? It's like, because you haven't come back and be like, I know better, or went to 27 different sources and asked them the same exact question. Right? Definitely, you haven't went to people who are not being successful and said, how did you get to be unsuccessful? Because I really want to,
right.
And so, because I always say, people ask the peer group of, like, the people that are struggling, how they're going, or how much are you paying this person? I don't think I want to ask that person. So, but when I tell you to, I'm like, and I mean it in a good way. Like, when we've talked, I'm like, hey, Stephanie, this is the things you need to do. And you're like, okay, I'll do them.
Yeah.
So, but most people question everything. So what are your thoughts? What makes you? Because it's such a cool thing. Because I'm just like, she just does it, and this is a kind of thing. It's just like a patient, right? If the patient will listen to you, it just works, right? It's like, just trust me. Like, I'll do it, and it will work. It's like, I'm not guessing here. Like, this is what I actually do. But would you say it's the same thing, that you're just like, what? And I don't know if I'm asking a great question here, but I'm kind of going to the way you handle things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned about, like, I don't go to a million different sources. I mean, there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? Like, but if I go and take how this guy does it and how that guy does it and how that guy does it and do a little bit of both, I'm probably going to end up with a really messed up cat.
There you go.
So instead, you've got to, like, figure out who you trust, what is the plan that you like, who do you relate to, who do you say, okay, this is the business direction I want to go with, and then you got to commit. I mean, it's like with anything, like, I'm really into surfing, and if you go and drop into a big wave and you don't fully commit, like, that's going to end real bad. You either got to say, I'm not going for this wave, or I'm going for it, and there's no in between. So I think that's something that you've got to, when you decide this is the path I want to go down, this is the person who I'm going to take my advice from, then you've got to go all in. Like, you chose them for a reason. You put your trust there and trust.
And I bring that up because it's when people think that they have all the answers, or when they put pepper on their fries, or put different cats together or whatever, right?
Your analogies are better than that.
But this is where we get the result, and someone goes, well, it just doesn't work. And you're like, well, you never actually did it. You actually went to ask 12 different friends about how to do it, and then you changed it. Or you said, which is the one that drives me nuts, I'm already doing all that. And you're like, okay. you're not, right? You're not doing all that. If you were, you'd be in a different position. And, so I love that that was a great way to say it, is if you're taking a whole bunch of different approaches, you're not going to get there. You got to pick the approach, put confidence and trust, and move forward. And I 100% agree. I've said on certain things before in this podcast, I'm like, look, if it's not me, find someone to do that. Because, one of the things I said is you got to figure out how to take this business and do awesome, amazing things with it. And it's not just about being able to pick up the phone call. I mean, you got to be able to, there's a lot of capital movements and things we got to make and decisions. And so you got to have the right advice around that. But you've always been able to just, hey, I'm going to make this happen. So kudos on the success of being able to do that, which is one of the reasons I want you on the podcast, because I was like, man, she's done it right,
Thank you.
And there's where I do need that water, Reese. Reese goes, hey, do you need a glass of water? I was like, no. And then I was
like, that's going to be a mistake.
He's like, are we sure? Here we go.
I know Eric by now is like, yeah, he's going to need water about 25 minutes into this. He's going to ask for Reese.
Reese did, by the way, prepare me. But see, now you can know we're truly off the cuff.
So what would you say is your so over the we've worked together for a very long time. What would you say is the number one contribution to your success over this run? I think a lot of people are looking for, she was able to do this. What was the one thing that she could attribute this success to? Is there, is it attitude? Is it having numbers together? What would you say is the underlining thing that you would point out?
Honestly, having you and Eric in my corner. Yeah, I mean,
I did not put her up to say that, by the way. This is not a plug. I mean,
no, 100% though. I mean, we get very little business training in dental school. My dad is a CFO. He was trying to talk me through business, but he was having such high-level conversations. I really would just eyes glaze over. I'm not really sure what you're talking about, and I don't really know how to relate it to dental. And that would be a thing he'd say to you all the time. It's like, well, I don't really know what it's like in your industry. I don't know what the benchmarks are in your industry. And so it was, to me, it was huge to have somebody who said, hey, I know your industry. These are where we should be in your industry. This is where we can go. This is how we can get there. Here's a game plan. I needed a coach.
We all need coaches.
Oh, yeah.
We have to have coaches. I want to go back to the first meeting where I met your dad, because I forgot about that story, but it's important because your dad comes in. I remember, I can visualize it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And your dad comes in with you, and he sits down, and her dad's a CFO of a large company in Atlanta area, and so in a sense I got to win dad's approval, right? And
yeah.
So we're going through a few hours. I'll never forget your dad. He puts on his coat and he was like, just listen to him. I trust him. And I was like, I want dad's approval.
Yep. And dad no longer has to come to the meetings, and dad does not really participate in the business anymore, because now I got it, and I got Eric in my corner.
It was good, because I'll never forget that meeting, because once dad was like, all right, you're good, I was like, all right, sweet. But I love that. I love that he came in and is a part of that, because it goes back to your story. I mean, we all have these stories, and it's such a pleasure to see what you've been able to do. I want people to hear kind of some of the things you're saying, which is you get what you measure. Ultimately, look, if you care about team morale, measure it. If you care about profitability, measure it. If you care about business growth, measure it. The things that we measure get managed. Mm-hmm. And we can't go to 100 people. This is what happens all the time. People ask 100 people what to do. And also, I was sharing at the leaders level. You're part of our group, and I was sharing this idea that I went to our group, our leadership team, and I said, hey, let's create a vacation policy. And everybody said, my friend's company does this. And I remember saying to all of them, your friend hates their company. Don't tell me that. I don't want to care what your friend, that's the same person who called you up last night complaining and saying, I just want to quit. I hate my job. So I was like, what do great companies do? I think the problem with going to just asking anybody their information, it's the great Jim Rohn once said, he was like, be careful of whose advice is being dispensed, because if you're just buying someone's advice and you're just listening to the person who's struggling, right, who doesn't have the business you want, and you go ask them, hey, what do you think I should pay this person? Or what do you think I should do? It's like, are you sure that's the advice you want? Do you want their story as part of your story? Do you want that to be part of what you take on? And so making sure that we're looking at the people who are bringing us advice and saying, does this person truly have my best interest in place? And making sure that it aligns, and making sure that people that are having the advice are successful. One of the things you've also done is I've asked you, I said, hey, go out in town and start talking to people outside of dental. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. You definitely mentioned to, expand my circle of friends and outside in other areas of business. And we've actually created a cool little group of young entrepreneurs, different industries. There's a veterinarian that has multiple practices. That's a friend of mine that's part of it. Somebody who owns a couple of restaurants. One of the people who own Savannah Bee Company, which is like huge now. But yeah, so it's fun. We get together and we kind of, talk through business problems that we might have. And
what's the advantage of that? Why be outside dental?
It helps you think outside of what everybody in your industry is doing. And it's really actually very interesting how different our industries can be as far as how we would handle the same sort of situation. Like whether it be vacation days or, difficulty with a team member, a compensation plan, whatnot. They're all very different.
And I think one of the reasons why I challenged that, I was like, hey, go stop hanging out with so many dentists and go talk to people who are not dentists and find out what they're doing, because when you're in the boat with the same people, it's like you're getting the same advice. So go to find someone in a different boat and say, hey, what are you guys doing? And whether that's helpful or not, it's like you get to see different frame of references. Because sometimes I think we get so tracked in dental and hang out with dentists, and it's just the dental. And it's like all of a sudden you talk to somebody else and they're like, yeah, we're doing 25 million this year. And you're like, whoa, how'd you get there? And then they start giving you thoughts and you're like, oh, it's great, right?
Well, I think that's part of the, like I said, nobody really told me it was going to be hard kind of thing. Like you hang out with people who are doing like crazy successful, and you're like, like they're not that different from me. That must not be that hard to get to. Like, let's keep going for it, different perspectives.
I love it. And so, it's such I could talk to you, by the way, for the next 5 hours. So we just talked for 5 hours. I think we could talk for another 5 hours, right?
Totally. Like I said, my flight's not till 10 something. I've got plenty of time.
That's what generally happens on the podcast.
Well, I think I don't want you
Longest ever.
We've done, we can do. Sometimes I try to cut it off, but I do think it's important, because I do know the people who are listening, and I know people are like, oh, look, I need some tidbits, I need some things to, and so it's think about it, and what I wanted you to do, and I think it's just finding these key things and say, well, what makes somebody successful? I think we all have to do it. We say, what is someone doing that maybe I'm not doing, or maybe some of the things I've got to look at. But one of the other ways you're successful, and Matthew mentioned it briefly, and said you're here on a Wednesday, and you're able to do that, get out of the office, but you're able to take some time off. I hope it's okay that I share, but one time Stephanie and I did a meeting, and you were on the back of a pickup truck off the Pacific Coast Highway. So I was sharing
on a surf break.
On a surf break. So like that's like saying something. Okay, so if you can be on the Pacific Coast Highway on a surf break, right, then you guys can afford to take a morning off. Okay, so. How is it so tell me about the balance of time. So you do a good job. So you're building this thing. So some people might listen to this go, oh my gosh, she must work 70 hours a week. I want to have quality of life. She probably works like a dog, and she never has time for herself. But that's not true, is it?
That's definitely not true. No, I absolutely love my life. I have created a really great lifestyle so far, and it only gets better every day.
So you tend to take trips?
I tend to take a lot of trips. I think if you want to hear about my October, November, I think it was LA, Miami, Atlanta, Amelia Island, back to Atlanta, Raleigh, and now here I am back in Atlanta again.
How was your practice during those months? How did your practice do?
It did fine. It does great. Yeah.
Hey, this is like a case
I'm
study. Yeah, right, mic drop. Because I do. This is what we talk about in this podcast. It's like you can get out of the chair, you can build a practice, you can take care of people, and you can do that. Is that just because you prioritize it, honestly?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I love that little like rock analogy, the rock and the sand and the
Right.
race, whatever. You put the things in that matter most. Like I need to take care of the business. I need to take care of what matters to me. And what matters to me is like traveling and surfing. Those are two of my super big passions, and my family. So I make sure that there's time for those always. And like one of my things to like, is my year successful is I need to have taken a week vacation every month. If I didn't do that, my year was not.
All right, hold on. Back up. All right. So,
Rewind.
all right. Say that last. How much do you take off a month?
A week vacation every month.
Okay, hold on. Because some people tell me they can't take a week off a year. Okay, and so you're able to take a week off a month
Yeah,
and still have a successful business
of course.
and still grow,
Yeah.
and it doesn't fall apart.
It doesn't fall apart. My team might miss me, but they have other great team members that keep it together.
I love this because, gosh, we should just start off like this is the Dental Vacation Podcast, right? We could just jump in and be like, all right, where did you go this week? And we could just talk about like what's your next trip, right?
Mexico.
See, it's already been planned. So
Oh yeah, next week.
it's so funny. So I'm Facebook friends with you, and I go on there, and I'm just like, where's she at now? Like, there's always like a picture or something.
Oh yeah, Charleston. I had to add that to the list. I missed.
By
that.
the way, I grew up in
there.
Florida. Now, surf is not great in Florida. So I'll blame it on the surf, not the surfer.
Let's say that.
Is that. I have a friend of mine who's like, he just like looks at the wave and gets up and just starts surfing. And then as hard as I paddle, for whatever reason, like it doesn't seem to work out the same.
It is definitely harder to learn to surf on the East Coast. The first time I went to California and went surfing, and I paddled out and I caught my first wave, and I'm like, no wonder so many girls surf out here. It is so much easier. The East Coast is much harder. So go
That's what I'm thinking.
to California, go to Hawaii.
You can stop in Waco and we'll practice there.
Just to
Honestly, yes. Yeah, can we do a retreat to Waco to the surf park? That would be epic.
We'll do a
Let's
podcast
rent
directly
the
from
whole
there.
thing.
Sold.
Yeah.
We'll do a
Sold.
podcast from there, and then we'll video of Eric trying to catch the wave at the surf park.
That'll be great TV.
It would be really great if I stay up. If not, it's not really.
With
gonna be
Reese's
great.
editing skills, you're gonna look.
Can you
like,
do it in one of your really
legit.
sharp suits? I want to see you surfing on the real
loafs,
leisurely
Dr.
and
in the loafs.
yeah.
In the loafs, you gotta keep the Gucci loafs on. Like you gotta.
Oh no! Ow. Those will not recover after that.
But you could do it. I think it's. Oh my gosh, what a fun topic! I mean, it really is. It is. So Matthew. And by the way, anyone listening, just know that if I skip like every fourth podcast, it's because I'm hanging out with Dr. Sweeney. And so Matthew, I'm not going to see you, but I haven't figured that out yet. So Dr. Sweeney's got that on me. I mean, it's awesome. I really do. We were talking recently about must. And I love that you use the rock analogy, which is, those people don't understand is that if you put the sand in first, right, into a cup, most people have heard it, but in case you haven't, then you go to add in like rocks, they can't get them in. But if you put the rocks in first, the things that matter most, then you can add the sand, and it's probably a much more eloquent way to explain it. But ultimately, the things that matter most to you are the things that happen.
Yeah.
But what we hear all the time is, as a doctor, is there's no way I could step away from my practice. And we have case studies, i.e. you, where we're like, we've taken people completely out of dental chair. And so we tell people that you can do that. And I love this idea. So you just said, that's a priority in my life. I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you're able to take this time off and travel and do the things you want to do. I mean, that's ultimately it, right? Because it's a priority.
Yeah, I think sometimes as dentists and doctors and such that we can get a little bit of an ego where we think we're necessary and that the whole world's going to fall apart.
It's okay. You can say it. It's fine.
But yeah, you're not necessary. Your practice will be okay without you, and somebody else can do the same thing you do.
No, I would say exactly what happened when you just said that. By the way, just so you know, there are so many doctors who just listened and said, this is what they said. By the way, this is you. Yes, I'm talking to you. This is what they said. It's different in my practice. She doesn't understand my practice. Guarantee you that's exactly what just happened. If she understood that I'm the only one that can do that, trust me, this is what just happened. And yes, I'm talking to you right now, you, the person who's saying, no, he's not talking to me. No, I'm talking to you, the person who just said that he doesn't understand. Right? He doesn't understand my practice. My market's different. My team's different. Whatever it is, there's some reason why that person can't do it, right? But you just prioritize it. But I would also argue one of the things you do is you take care of the team, which allows that to happen. Agreed?
Oh, 100%. We've empowered the team. They know what our core values are. They understand where we're going with the practice and what our goals are. So they don't need me to make every decision.
But core values are just that thing in the binder somewhere, right? I mean, those are just like something like, what do you mean core values? What does that mean?
The requirements that make your organization what it is.
This is, stay tuned for the next podcast. The core value. I mean, I think
we
this
could do
is
a whole one on that.
So we just did a leadership retreat. Okay, so let's kind of, I'm not here to plug the leadership retreat, but what, for you and your team, coming to an event like that, when we had a giant room packed out, it was great. And so what would you say to somebody else? Like, what did you get out of it? Your team got out of it, and how does that help you going into 2022?
Oh, wow. I got so much out of it. Like, where to even begin? Well, I think a big thing that I really got out of it was values over interest. That really hit home to me a lot. So basically that, if you're aligned in your values, that matters more than any of the other interests. And I could see that from my personal relationship point as well as from a work relationship. So, makes you rethink that patient who is a jerk and just turns everybody's day to being awful, or that team member who comes in and, they might be a great producer, but they treat everybody else on the team like crap. Sorry.
No, I mean, I say much worse. I'm a sailor, so that's what I'm a former sailor, so I can say I cuss like, if I say it, it's I tell
true.
By the way, I do tell my kids that. I'm like, if I have, every now and then, if I drop some cuss word, I get a give. It's cussed like a sailor for a reason. I was like, I think I do pretty well. So just so you know, if you're listening to the podcast, that's where that comes from. That's my excuse. Or I'm passionate. Yeah. There you go.
But I think with that really hit home to all of us a lot. Also going through and writing down our personal core values and really seeing like, oh my gosh, when we write down our personal core values and then we look at what our business core values are, and we did make some adjustments to our business core values, but they were like more in like the wording and polishing it. But it was like, wow, no wonder this is our leadership team, because your personal core values align so much with what our business core values is. Like, no wonder we're this team that's doing amazing things together.
Because they align in values, and they're all driven towards the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I'll say the values over the interest thing, because that's something we never talked about in this podcast. It's something we brought up, which is ultimately speaking that leaders put their values over their interest. And what we see oftentimes, especially in a dental practice, and that can be from the hygienist, the doctor, the front desk, people oftentimes in business, I shouldn't even say in dental practice, in business, oftentimes people will put their interests over their values. And they'll put aside their values, they'll use some story to justify why they did what they did, and then they'll put their values aside and say, well, and then everyone else tells me I should just exploit this human capital or whatever it is, right? And so they put their values aside, they tell themselves that's how you create a great business or whatever story they use for the day, and then they wonder why it's all falling apart. And it's all falling apart because it's not built on their values. They put their values aside because someone told them to, or some consultant told them to. And when you have people with liked values or light, why can't I speak? It's been a long day. No, I think I was making up like 2 or 3 words today. With aligned values, thank you. When you have people with aligned values, then ultimately speaking, that it's easier to come to work every day.
Yeah.
It's a joy to come to work. if you go surfing, they'll take care of the business because their values align. They want to see you do well, right?
Well, we all care about each other. And I think that's something that the leadership retreat also kind of helped to show to everybody, because it wasn't a retreat about, hey, this is how we're going to be more efficient in the practice so we can make more money. It was, this is how we're going to be better leaders to better take care of our team, which in turn takes care of the rest.
Which in turn takes care of the rest, which is when we stop for a moment and put our values first. And as we're wrapping up, it's a great place to actually insert that, because you have shown so much that your values matter before your interest. And it's interesting. I think one of the reasons why you're so successful is because you put your values first. You've always put your values first. And some of those values are personal values, taking care of yourself, being able to travel, those types of things. I think that's a value, and it's important to you.
And I definitely try to force that upon my team too. Like, work-life balance, get out of here.
Get out of here, right? Yeah.
Go home, go do something fun. You did awesome here today. I know it's stressful. It'll still be there tomorrow. Like, go home, go enjoy yourself. And I think they appreciate that I care enough to tell them to go home.
Yeah. Being able to, you mean you don't watch the clock every little minute, and if they leave a minute early or freaking out or none of that? No, it's not. Because my friend, Dr. Smith, he if they leave a minute early, he lets them go.
Yeah. He's got the punch card on the counter.
So you lead with values, you care about people. I think, it's like I say, you've been at leadership retreat every year. It's not like, you're right, it's not a leadership retreat about let's all come together and figure out efficiencies and no, we're actually finding out who people are and how we can actually all succeed together. And so you put your values first when it comes to your team. You put your values first when it comes to yourself. You've led through values. You're courageous because this is the Stephanie Sweeney moment. Like, I just say, look, I think it's incredible to work with you. It's an honor to get to work with you, and I really appreciate you coming on this podcast. You and I could talk forever about, because I think our values align. And I think that's one of the reasons we've worked together for so long, is because our values align. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just about, just about a dollar. It's about being able to succeed and help other people and do awesome, amazing things in this world. And by doing that, you've been able to create this massively successful business. And which I would argue is only at the beginning, even with all the success you've created, but you've been able to do it with a way of taking care of other people, taking care of yourself, doing it the right way. And it's an honor to get to work with you. Thank you for being on this podcast. Thank you for taking this time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was truly an honor. And I honestly, my life would be so different had I never met y'all.
I appreciate that. And you and I were talking upstairs about authenticity, and I appreciate that, because I really do. I remember I went to Savannah last year, and I said to you, I was like, I said, thank you for the trust that, we've been working together for a few years, and I really appreciate it. And you looked right back at me and you said, well, you've earned that trust. And I really appreciate that. And I remembered that a moment. So, I really appreciate that, because we do care, and we are so blessed to work with people like you, and love to see your team and all the things you're doing. So, Awesome stuff. Guys, I would tell you, as you're listening to this podcast, don't just take that, I think Dr. Sweeney is such an amazing doctor, but I want you to listen to what she's saying and what she's telling you. You get what you measure, and take care of people, and put your values first, and take care of yourself. And these things are principles of business. These are the principles of great business. And and I would argue you've had such great success because of who you are and the way you lead people. And I would tell you to take the things she's saying and she doesn't know what I'm going through or any of those things. I don't want you to have the conversation in isolation. I want you to look at this and say, it's a better way to say is, what is she doing that I'm not doing? What can I take from this podcast that would really help my business? Because there's always nuggets we can take, which is why I asked you to be here. I think this is such a great thing, and I think that everyone listening right now is going to grab something that you just said and go and implement it, which is impact. And I appreciate you taking the time, because we don't know who's listening right now who's like, oh my gosh, I needed to hear that. So many times when people come back to us after this podcast, they're like, I needed to hear that today. And I think today so many people needed to hear your message. And not from me, and not from Matthew, And we didn't talk about sports, by the way, one time this whole podcast. But, we talked about surfing. Yes, we did. So, but hear it from you, an authentic voice and your words. And so thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, be a part of it. We will promise the same thing as when we bring a guest on. It's only going to be the best of the best. That's the only one we're going to ever let on this podcast. And you are the best of the best. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you.